Number 10, Mind Boggler. I mean, Mind Boggler only lasted a few short years as a character and only lasted a few short issues on the Suicide Squad team, but she really should have been so much better than she was. Mind Boggler's powers allowed her to control the minds of others and were so powerful that she could actually use them to get a target to do her bidding by making them basically hallucinate, creating illusions in their mind that made them believe they were doing one thing when in reality they were doing something completely different. Unfortunately, because she had humiliated Captain Boomerang in retaliation for him mistreating another member of the team, he let her get gunned down while on a mission, and then kind of just claimed after that he had simply arrived too late to help her. Rude. Man, Captain Boomerang can be pretty despicable, gotta say. Number 9, Captain Boomerang. To me, being classified as weak really just means unconventional or unique in terms of superhero or supervillain speak. It just means your skills are more specialized in usually a very niche area. With Captain Boomerang, that niche area is throwing things, often boomerangs. Captain Boomerang comes armed with various different kinds of boomerangs usually, but he doesn't really have any superpowers except being good at throwing boomerangs, which isn't really a superpower. At least initially in the comics, he doesn't have powers. I will admit that the second Captain Boomerang, Owen Mercer, the son of George Harkness, did seem to also display the ability to tap into the Speed Force, but it should also be acknowledged this likely comes from his relation to the Allen and Thawne family tree on his mother's side, not the OG Captain Boomerang side of the family, the Harkness side. Just FYI. Yeah, he's got some superpowers, but not so much on the original Captain Boomerang front. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed and you want me to talk more about cool Suicide Squad stuff, which I'm so down for. I'm wearing my shark sweater. I'm all ready for that King Shark Facts Part 2 list whenever you are. Number 8, Karen Grace. Karen was an original member of Task Force X and first appeared alongside the team in The Brave and the Bold. She was a love interest of Rick Flagg's and the two were in a relationship together, but their other teammates, Jess Bright and Hugh Evans, also had a thing for Karen, so Rick asked that she keep their relationship a secret to maintain the harmony of the team. In the end, their relationship was revealed, which did create a split in the team, and it resulted in the apparent death of both Hugh and Jess. Karen would continue on past her original appearance in Brave and the Bold and would go on to appear as a team member in the original run of Suicide Squad out of the 80s. She was skilled in combat and espionage and was the team's medic originally. She and Rick would have a son together, but she would later become resentful of Rick and then join the Manhunters in secret, later betraying Rick, but then ultimately sacrificing herself in the end to save him and double-crossing the Manhunters in the end there. Karen became more of a badass as time went on, but in the end, she was still a pretty squishy human. So, yeah.
Number 7, bullets. Bullets are something that are very scary for all speedsters, basically. Depending on where they get shot, their speed healing might not be able to save them. For example, look at Eobard Thawne in the Flashpoint Paradox. He was shot in the head by Batman. Normally, someone like Reverse Flash would be able to move out of the way of a bullet, but they also have to be paying attention and, are not distracted. If they are shot in the arm or leg and are able to remove the bullet, then their speed healing would be able to kick in and heal the wound much faster than the average human. But again, it all depends on where they end up getting shot.
Number 6, AKANDO. Admittedly, AKANDO's powers were actually pretty cool, but he didn't really last very long on the team. He first appeared in the 2018 Damage series in issue 1, and as a result of the failed mission he was part of, he ended up in a coma. AKANDO's powers allowed him to mimic other animals and their abilities. Along with being able to do this, he also seemed to have knowledge of how best to utilize those abilities and which ones were best for certain situations. Although he didn't apparently know them well enough, it seems, to avoid ending up in a coma, unfortunately. So, there's that. Poor AKANDO. So many cool people that are short-lived, and then so many people that are mediocre that seem to go on forever in Suicide Squad. That's always interesting to me.
Coming in at number 5, we've got Red Hulk. After a lifetime of hunting the Hulk, General Thunderbolt Ross decided it was time to take matters into his own hands. His own red hands. Assisted by AIM and the intelligentsia, he becomes a Hulk of his very own, this time more crimson than green, and then he sets out to find and fight the Hulk. The more power he draws, the hotter he gets though, so as he goes harder in the paint, the more likely he is to overheat, and if that happens, it's game over. I suppose that's a weakness most people have. If you fight too hard, you're gonna pass out, but the Red Hulk takes it to a brand new extreme.
Number 4, Beast. But only because he died. Beast was a member of the so-called original Suicide Squad mentioned in Ostrander's run that was apparently from the days of World War II. This original squad was sent on a mission to retrieve a tank, but it turned out what they were really there for was an atomic bomb. What? Beast was the member of the squad who agreed to stay behind to ensure that the rest of the team could escape, which was actually very brave of him. Unfortunately, he got gunned down and he died. It's believed, like many of the rest of the original team, that he was mostly like a normal human. His story and fateful end is mentioned in issue 26 of the original Suicide Squad series from the 80s, when Rick Flag remembers the stories that his father, Rick Flag Sr., and his uncle Jeb used to tell him about their time together on the squad. Jeb Stewart wasn't really his uncle though, he was his godfather. Facts.
Number 3. Black Flash. Black Flash has appeared in both the comics and the Arrowverse. He is this insanely scary creature who in the comics just appears when speedsters are close to death, but in the Arrowverse he's sent to come after speedsters. In DC's Legends of Tomorrow Season 2, Eobard Thawne was on the run from Black Flash. He was after him because he was a rogue time remnant and didn't belong in that timeline. Eobard had to constantly keep moving so that Black Flash wasn't able to find him. Eventually he did though, and took Eobard away. That was after Eobard made dozens and dozens of time remnants to stop the Legends. Man, that guy is just so friggin' powerful.
Number 2, Scorpio. Scorpio was a villain originally introduced in Steel in the New Earth continuity. However, he resurfaced in the current continuity only to be sacrificed as a member of the Suicide Squad team. Scorpio ended up on the team alongside our previous number that was mentioned, Ragdoll. While Ragdoll was first to die, Scorpio wasn't far behind him. And their death, in my opinion, was more humiliating simply because they were boasting the entire time of like how scary they were, only to find themselves drowned in what appeared to be a very shallow marsh. That's what it looked like happened. Scorpio even claimed to be more frightening than Swamp Thing. I feel like you don't make a bold claim like that and live to see it through usually, unless you are actually more scary than Swamp Thing. Scorpio was also killed by the ghouls that kept appearing near the initial target of the squad that we talked about in the previous point. Number 1, Slipknot. He's got sticky ropes. Sorry, sticky ropes that can also harden. I mean, this just sounds like some weird, dirty thing. Like, I feel like whoever wrote this, I don't know what they were thinking about these sticky ropes that can harden. Yikes. Anyways, if you don't like sticky ropes, you better watch out. Not only did Slipknot get the most unceremonious death in the Suicide Squad film from 2016, but even in the comics, he's honestly pretty lame. I'm actually surprised he lasted as long as he did. He was on the team for a short period, but wouldn't have an on-panel death until 2010 in the comics, though he didn't die in an issue of Suicide Squad, by the way. He was encouraged by Captain Boomerang during his time on the squad to try and escape, and as a result, he had his arm blown off. He suffered a worse fate in the film, though. He had more than his arm blown off. Pop. Pop.
Coming in at number 10, we've got the Riddler. Of all the supervillains throughout the universe, the Riddler is one of the most consistently interesting. He's an excellent foil for Batman, you know, the world's greatest detective. By setting up intricate puzzles and riddles for Mr. Wayne to solve, he provides all sorts of intrigue. Edward Nygma, what a name by the way, isn't terribly physically strong, nor does he have any sort of energy beam ready to fire. He's just extremely good at deductive reasoning and is able to plan very far ahead using his vast knowledge of eclectic things. He could probably be a master criminal if he wanted to, pulling off heists like no other without ever coming close to being caught. Unfortunately, he has a major weakness. He wants people to solve his riddles. He wants to be found. He's compelled to leave clues behind, pretty much no matter what. There could be a clean getaway right in front of his masked face, and he'd still find a way to leave behind some sort of tip for the folks looking to solve this crime. Really, anytime the Riddler loses, it's his own doing. You have to feel sort of bad for the guy at this point. I'm sure it was fun at first, but now he probably just wants to make a clean getaway and write some mystery novels or something. Maybe someday, Edward. Maybe someday. Coming in at number 9, we've got Thanos. Believe it or not, Thanos has a similar weakness to the Riddler. Sure, he's a gigantic purple powerhouse of a supervillain with a drove of committed lackeys that have crazy powers of their own, but he still fails in the same way as Mr. Enigma. Well, almost the same way. Throughout his various reigns, Thanos manages to take down countless heroes, even without the full power of the Infinity Gauntlet. He's got size, strength, speed, and mastery over all sorts of disciplines. Really, there's no reason for Thanos to fail at whatever he puts his mind to, but he still does somehow. It seems as though he believes that he's unworthy of his own power, therefore making subconscious mistakes and leaving openings for others to thwart his plans. So even if his weakness isn't apparent to those trying to bring him down, he'll lead them to victory somehow. Wow. Coming in at number 8, we've got the Penguin. Remember kids, smoking kills. The Penguin is another villain from the Batman universe who really doesn't have any superpowers per se. What he does have though is ruthless business sense, endless funds, and a whole lot of crazy technology. Plus he's based on a penguin. Incredible stuff really. His genius level intellect and surprising combat skills make him a formidable foe for sure, and that's not even counting his birds. But there's one thing that brings this flightless lad down. It's not an allergy to some sort of supernatural element, nor is it a proclivity for melting when exposed to heat. It's a self-inflicted wound. The Penguin has a weakness for cigarettes. That's right, death sticks, coffin nails. Didn't his mother tell him it was a terrible habit? I suppose he didn't like his parents too much to start with, but still, if there's one weakness that is extra terrible, it has to be one for smoking, even if it is through one of those fancy long-handled opera-style holders.
Number 7, Plastique. Plastique has appeared a few times with the Suicide Squad as a team member. She is a Canadian extremist known for terrorizing nations. Plastique has attempted to blow up multiple places of import, including the Statue of Liberty in New York City and the Canadian Parliament buildings in Ottawa. Pretty much all of her attempts to cause harm to political leaders or monuments, though, have been thwarted and usually lead to her imprisonment, and later led to her recruitment onto the Suicide Squad. Plastique is one of those members who could be really cool, but is just always kind of set up to fall flat, allowing her to become more well known for failing than succeeding. Initially, she just had knowledge of explosives, but she was later given powers which allowed her to create explosive blasts on her own. I don't know what this is. I guess if I was gonna do an explosive blast, this would be my move for that as a power.
Coming in at number 6, we've got Electro. Spider-Man, you've got it too easy. All your enemies have weaknesses that are super exploitable. You'd think that a man who can harness the power of electricity would do well, especially in a big city, but it seems as though his spirits are easily dampened. Get it? Hold on. So Electro can generate all sorts of electricity, which is extremely useful when he weaponizes it. He can also propel himself along with electromagnetic energy and even teleport by turning himself into electric current and jumping into wires. That all sounds super great, right? Like, it's nice to be Electro, but it's too bad that water can essentially stop him in his sparky tracks. There's the old idea that electricity will travel quickly through water, electrocuting anyone in contact with the liquid. Well, I mean, when it comes to Electro, water will just short circuit him. Womp womp. This wouldn't be too big of an issue, but Electro lives on Earth, you know, the planet covered in water.
Number 5, Time Wraiths. Time Wraiths were created for the Arrowverse, as far as I know. They could have popped up in the comics, although I didn't really see anything about that. I could be wrong though. If I am, let me know down in those comments below. In the Arrowverse, Time Wraiths are the scary beings that go after speedsters who mess with the timeline. Now, they didn't go after Eobard because, as he stated, he knew what he was doing. They only go after speedsters who don't know what they're doing, like when Barry goes back in time and interacts with himself, or something along those lines. They are there to make sure that the timeline stays intact. They have gone after Barry multiple times, most recently during the Flash's 100th episode during Season 5 when Barry and Nora went back in time. But if Eobard went back in time and he was doing something wrong, the Time Wraiths would go after him and could essentially take him away.
Coming in at number 4, we've got MODOK. This one might seem obvious, but it's worth mentioning. MODOK, or a mental organism designed only for killing, was once an ordinary man. George Tarleton was a skilled technician who ended up joining AIM. He knew they were a little radical, but not to the extent that he found out later on. The organization altered George into a super intelligent being, which made his dome grow to unheard of sizes, and then realized they should probably give him a way to move around. Thus, the Doomsday Chair was born, carting MODOK around by levitating. He would think circles around everyone, using his brilliant mind, and even had psionic powers. But if he's rendered chairless, it's game over. Or if someone turns his power off.
Number 3, Ragdoll. We talked about specific abilities before, but this one was very weirdly specific. Ragdoll was Peter Merkel Jr. and is a legacy name actually, Ragdoll, meaning that Peter Jr. wasn't the first to use it and perhaps won't even be the last to use it. Ragdoll's main thing was being a contortionist, and their MO tended to be eliminating their victims by strangling them with their own contorted limbs, which is just so bizarrely specific. They also fought with daggers though, but neither of their skills was able to save them from a bunch of ghoul-like creatures who were stalking the squad's target. Ragdoll ended up torn to shreds and ripped limb from limb by the ghouls in the 2018 Suicide Squad Annual, which is from the 2016 series but happened in 2018. That was the year it came out. Just in case anyone's like, that was from the 2016 series. I know. If you're looking for it, it might be easier for you to look up. Actually, maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe it would be easier for you to look up just 2016 Annual 1. I don't know. What helps you all find comics when I give you information? Let me know, and I'll give it to you. Do you like volume numbers? Do you like years? Do you like the year it came out? The year of the series it was part of? So many questions.
Coming in at number 2, we've got the Joker. Speaking of lunatic clown men, wow, who would have guessed? The trickster of Gotham, the prince of pranks, the maniac who causes a lot of problems for everyone. He manages to outsmart and outplay all sorts of powerful folks through sheer ingenuity and madness. Because beyond all those crazy gadgets and brainwashed lackeys, the Joker is just a man. And men are weak to bullets, or knives, or being punched through the chest. Finally at number 1, we've got Kingpin. And speaking of men, Kingpin loves his wife a lot. Like, enough to make some major mistakes. She does not approve of his criminal lifestyle, but finds herself involved anyways. So when you look to all of the other villains with tragic backstories and Achilles' heels the size of Achilles himself, you have to wonder how Kingpin feels. Ask him about his weakness and he'll respond, "My wife."
Number 10, Speedster Guns. Speedster guns have been brought up in the comics and the show, but are mainly used in the TV show The Flash. They were created to try to stop and incapacitate speedsters, and it temporarily cuts off their connection to the Speed Force. Although some speedsters have shown better resistance to these weapons than others, and their effects won't always last as long. They have been used multiple times over the course of the series. Usually the person shooting ends up missing, or if they do hit them, it doesn't last long, but hey, it is still a scary thought for speedsters to know that there are weapons like those out there in the world. Number 9, Zero Gravity. This one was introduced during DC's Legends of Tomorrow Season 2. It was during the episode Moonshot. Ray and Eobard are on a shuttle headed for the moon, and it is during that episode that it's revealed that when there is zero gravity, Reverse Flash's speed just doesn't work. So he isn't able to actually attack and kill Ray, which is what he wanted to do. Now, that is a very effective way to disable a speedster. But at the same time, it's hard to think of many moments when you would be battling a speedster somewhere in space. But hey, it's a cool thing to know. And a very scary thought for someone with speed abilities if they're ever, stuck in space, fighting someone. Number 8, the Cold. This weakness has not only been shown to hurt the Reverse Flash, but other speedsters as well. In the Arrowverse, Eobard was knocked out after being hit with Captain Cold's cold gun. Also, Barry has been incapacitated when he enters certain cold environments. I mean, there was a point in Season 5 where he was fighting Caitlin Snow's father, Dr. Thomas Snow, who was also known as the villain, Icicle. And the room he was in was so cold that he wasn't even able to run or basically move at all. It was only when he started to feel the heat that he was able to recover. The only thing that kept him from dying was his speed healing. A normal human would have died much sooner in that kind of harsh, cold environment. So, someone like the Reverse Flash, it would also affect them if he was in a room that was just as cold as the one Barry was in.
Coming in at number 7, we've got Venom. Eddie Brock has had a rough go, hasn't he? The poor guy lost everything, decided to blame it on Spider-Man, and then got bonded with a symbiotic alien. Well, at least he got some wicked powers out of it. He's got all sorts of superhuman physical abilities, as well as the ability to block out Spidey's spider senses. Add in night vision, venomous fangs, and of course shape-shifting, and you've got a powerful villain slash anti-hero slash whatever else Venom decides to do. But alas, there are a couple of rough weaknesses that make this symbiote hunter a little less effective than he'd be otherwise. Firstly, there's the fact that fire, or really any form of intense heat, really does a number on him. Even a match could prove to be a little too much for poor Venom depending on the circumstances. Fire can be more or less avoided if you're careful though. His other weakness is a little more omnipresent. It's sound. Loud noises can take out the big lad. It really disturbs the alien. And Venom seems to operate largely in New York City, which isn't exactly known for ever being quiet. Tough break, big guy.
Number 6, nanites, courtesy of Ray Palmer. I just had to say it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a very famous line from season 1 of The Flash. It's said by Oliver Queen when he is fighting the Reverse Flash. He shoots him with an arrow full of nanites and then temporarily disables his speed, and then the two of them proceed to fight, hand to hand. Now, because of that, it just shows how scary nanites can be for speedsters. If they are injected with them, it takes away their speed, making them essentially human, and therefore they could be killed. Eobard was eventually able to reverse the effects of the nanites, no pun intended, but if Oliver was able to put an arrow through him before that, he would have been dead if he was shot with one.
Number 5, Jeff Bright. Originally named Jess Bright in the comics, though his name would change later on when he reappeared in the Suicide Squad series. As Jess Bright, he first appeared in The Brave and the Bold in issue 25, when he was first on the Suicide Squad. One of the strongest things about Jeff Bright was actually his connection to his partner, Hugh Evans. Both men were geniuses and best friends, and their bond and friendship often came in handy when dealing with foes as part of the original Task Force X team, aka the Suicide Squad. Ha ha ha. Jess and Hugh were both geniuses, and in the end both seemingly died on a mission after they were knocked off a cliff. However, Jess lived because he got lucky and the Yeti that was falling with him kind of broke his fall. He would return in issue 50 as the vengeful and zombie-like Koshi the Deathless, but would ultimately be defeated by the current squad members.
Number 4, Cicada's Dagger. Cicada in the comics is slightly different than Cicada in the Arrowverse. In the Arrowverse, his dagger is actually able to basically take away the powers of any metahuman, if it is in close proximity to them. As you can probably tell, that caused a lot of trouble for Team Flash, or any metahuman for that matter. Cicada was also just really powerful. He had enhanced strength and was able to leap high distances. The dagger was actually being used to take away Eobard's powers in the future. He was in a prison cell and everyone assumed that they were just using metahuman dampeners, but no, they were actually using Cicada's dagger to keep him from using his powers. It was eventually destroyed though, and that's when he went on basically a big killing spree, killing tons and tons of guards.
Coming in at number 3, we've got Harley Quinn. Another genius with an Achilles heel, but Harley's really has nothing to do with her own limitations. She's just a sucker for love. Or manipulation if you look at it objectively. The Joker, while serving time on Arkham, managed to brainwash poor Dr. Quinn. He broke her down and built her back up in his image. She's super smart, super resourceful, and super popular, but she's always got this thorn in her side, Mr. J. When your weakness is an over-dependent relationship with a gaslighting lunatic clown man, you know you've got it rough.
Number 2, The Flash. This one applies for both the comics and the Arrowverse. Eobard is so obsessed with the Flash that, in a way, it always seems to be his undoing. He always wants to ruin his life. And also, the Flash is really one of the only ones that can actually stop him. The two have a massive rivalry, and it seems like just when you think it's over, Eobard comes up with some new scary plan to mess with Barry. But it's usually the Flash that is the cause of his undoing. Yet, for some reason, he always wants to go after him. I mean, I guess that's what makes their stories so great. They are forever tied to one another. Number 1, himself. Yep, himself. Eobard is a little bit, how do you say this, unstable? He became so obsessed with the Flash that he literally wanted to become him. I mean, he even recreated an accident that gave Barry his powers. It didn't work the first time though, and he became really scarred. But then he ended up going back in time because he wanted to meet the Flash, using the cosmic treadmill. He ends up going back further than he thought, and while he was there, he noticed these posters that showed the Flash fighting some other speedster. Turns out, when you look closer, it said the name of that speedster was Reverse Flash, also known as Eobard Thawne. This, of course, made him snap, and turned him into the villain we all know today. Now, he is just full of hate, and will stop at nothing to hurt the Flash, even though that in reality, he is really only hurting himself in the process. I mean, all this wouldn't have happened if he didn't try to recreate and become the Flash and then go back in time to meet the Flash, I mean, he was kind of the cause of his own undoing in that way. And that is why his biggest weakness is himself.